Grab your cup. Let's talk about cortisol. Cortisol is in the news all the time, or on social media anyway. People are always worried about cortisol. And I had a conversation last night on a client call about cortisol and what you can do to lower it. But first, I want to point out cortisol is not the bad guy. We need cortisol. Anything that our body does, even if it's a response to something, is what it's supposed to do. We are designed perfectly. There were no mistakes. The mistakes are the way that we're living and how we're abusing the function of our body or not supporting it, maybe is a better way to say that. But cortisol is important. Without cortisol, you wouldn't get up in the morning. You wouldn't go after your day. Certainly when there's a problem or we're under threat, we need that boost in cortisol to handle it, to run away from it, whatever we need to do. So cortisol is not the problem, and it's critical. The problem is when cortisol stays elevated. And if you can look at it like, it's not that my body's doing something wrong, it's that the cortisol is staying elevated for a reason. And so why is that bad? Because if we need cortisol, why is elevated cortisol a problem? Well, first of all, elevated cortisol is going to keep inflammation up in your body. Probably 15 years ago, as I went back to school for some of the credentials that I use now in my work, I learned about chronic inflammation and how that really is part of every disease, every chronic condition that you might be dealing with. There's an element of inflammation in the background. Inflammation is, again, a normal response of the body. It sees a problem and it sends inflammatory cells to deal with it. Cortisol, elevated cortisol, keeps telling the body there's a problem, and it keeps that inflammation up. And here's the thing, cortisol will go up whether there's an actual physical or biological problem like virus cells or toxins from chemicals, pesticides in our foods. Cortisol will also go up because of our emotions and because of what we're thinking and feeling. If we're staying under stress, and sometimes stress just feels normal. It just feels like, well, this is my normal day. This is how I feel all the time. I don't feel stressed, but you are stressed. And cortisol is staying up. It's driving your inflammation, even though there's no physical thing to go fight. It's emotional stress. It's anxiety. It will still keep your inflammation high in your body. So any chronic health issue that you're trying to deal with is not going to be able to resolve itself with elevated inflammation and elevated cortisol. Cortisol also disrupts the function of the liver, whose main job is to keep our body clear of toxins. So cortisol is going to stop that from functioning well. Cortisol will disrupt your thyroid hormones down as your body's telling your thyroid, make more thyroid hormone, and that hormone is being sent out, and thyroid is used in every cell of the body. Cortisol will disrupt the communication in that chain. So elevated cortisol will greatly affect thyroid function. Elevated cortisol will disrupt your sleep, especially if you're having your circadian rhythm is disrupted. Your body doesn't know sleep, awake. Elevated cortisol will wake you up in the middle of the night. That's part of the thing that keeps your brain going on, right? And elevated cortisol will disrupt your metabolism, again, because it's disrupting your thyroid, but also that chronic inflammation. Your body cannot metabolize its foods and maintain your body weight with elevated cortisol. So it is a very big deal, and rightly so, that everybody's talking about it and people are realizing cortisol needs to be managed, but it's not the bad guy. And then the other piece of it is, I was discussing last night with my client, I went through a time, maybe you can relate to this, where I was looking for all of the ways to manage my cortisol. I was buying supplements, and they weren't cheap. I was buying supplements to help my adrenals, and I was doing all kinds of things. And here's what I want to share with you and see if this makes sense. I want you to imagine you go over to your stove and you turn the burner on. So whoop, that flame is going. You can see the burner and the flame. And that flame represents the inflammation in your body and the cortisol that's elevated, right? It's turned on. And it's turned on due to stress and anxiety. It's not turned on in this case, in this scenario, from toxins or other issues, but it's stress and anxiety that turned your burner on. So now that flame is burning. And now you're looking for all the things that you know of that can put out a fire. So you're pouring water on the flame. You are dumping baking soda on the flame. All the different things that you think will help tamper that flame down. But meanwhile, the burner is still turned on, which means from underneath, that gas is coming up through the system. And as much as you do everything on the top to try to get that flame down, the answer lies in turning off the burner. You got to turn it off. You got to figure out what's underneath that elevated cortisol. So my client last night in our coaching call was saying, well, this is, I don't really feel that stressed, or this is my life. I'm used to going. I'm used to, she works, she's got kids, she's doing a lot of stuff. And I get that. That's the way our culture right now does not support what our body actually needs and how to down-regulate that cortisol. You have to do that yourself, and you have to be willing to step out of what's been normal for you and do something different. So what she was saying is, well, I exercise. Exercise helps me relieve my stress. And it does. Here's why. Because all of the things that get elevated when we're stressed, when that cortisol drives up, now our heart is beating faster, our breath is going, it's your body's saying fight or flight, fight or flight. Well, when you go out for a run, let's say, you give your body a physiological reason for those things. So those things might have happened because of a conference call you were on. Those things might have happened because of an argument you had with someone in your family. So it could be emotional reasons for those things to have been elevated, but you give your body a physiological reason to have them, which allows them to then come back down, as she said, for a little while. For a little while. So yeah, I go out for the run and I get myself exhausted and everything drops and I'm feeling good for a while. But then, even within the same day, everything goes back up again. That's what she said, and that's why. Because you didn't shut off the burner of the emotions and the thinking and the stress and the anxiety. You just gave your body a physiological reason for a little while. We want to go to, what do I need to do to turn the burner off? So she was like, well, maybe I could do a walk in the morning. So walk in the morning and then do her run after work or whatever the schedule is. But here's what I want you to consider. What you really need is not more stress. Exercise is stress. What you need is not more stress. You need to teach your body how to down-regulate, how to come out of the stress and anxiety. Really let it go in your thinking and in your emotions. That's the only way to turn the burner down. Otherwise, everything else is pouring stuff on top of a fire that's being fed from underneath. And it's only going to be a temporary fix. And the cortisol is going to be staying elevated. And you can see that in the symptoms that your body is giving you. So learning how to get out of the stress and anxiety is going to be critical for your health, going to be critical for your sleep, for your experience of your life. We didn't even get into relationships, but it impacts your relationships as well. So what do you do to get yourself out of stress and anxiety? Put it in the comments, because as we share with each other, you might be thinking of things and seeing things that other people share that you didn't even think of for yourself. And if you're stumped, I don't know, that's where I come in. So I'm happy to help you with that. But share how you actually down-regulate your stress, lower your cortisol from the burner, and get yourself out of stress and anxiety, because it's critical.